So I'd like to introduce from the Finnish National Agency of Education, Head of Unit Kati Lounema.
Lounema. Yeah.
Please, Kati.
Yeah. Thank you, and good afternoon. I chose to speak in English this time, even though you perhaps know that we have two official languages in Finland, Swedish and Finnish, but I think that here I should be so perfect in my Swedish that it's better to use English. I have two topics today. The other is our the work what we have been doing with our qualification framework, and the other is the reform of vocational education and training that we are actually we are in it at the time, since it's the legislation is coming into force in less than 1 month. That's from the beginning of January. With our qualification framework, I chose to have a picture of our education system. I'm not going through it, but I want to say that we have included it all in the framework. So it is just like you have also designed a framework that includes all of the education system. The preparation of framework we started like 10 years ago, and we only have had it in force from the beginning of this year. And there are perhaps many reasons for it, but I think the main reason was that it is not so easy to get new ideas or anything to go through into laws or act and decrees. But even though we started 10 years ago, and I think we were kind of first in the line at that time, and now we are like last ones in the Europe to have it. But I don't think that it's not. I think it's not bad at all, because we have now much to learn from others who have had it, been using it for a long time. When we started with it, the system, the framework we have now is much like the one we designed in the first phase. There are some small changes been made, but overall it looks like the same. And how we made it was together with our stakeholders, that is the education providers and working life, and it was all of the time. Everyone was very much in it, and everyone thought that this is something we should really have, and that is also the idea now. And when we had during these 10 years, it has been there were very much expectations in the beginning, but since now we have had the system, there is just the enthusiasm is raising again. And what we did in our national agency is that even though we didn't have the framework, we imagined like we would have it, because we knew that when it would come, what it would perhaps look like. So we have been designing our qualifications, thinking that we have a qualification system like this one. So it does. It didn't. There were not much changes when it came in the beginning of this year. This is not perhaps the best fit of the slide, but I will tell you that there are many objectives that we have with the system. I would like to take out two. two of them what we want to have, and this is from the viewpoint of the students and what they get when we have this framework. It is that when they have a qualification and they want to work somewhere else than in Finland, and they go, for example, in Europe or some other countries. When we didn't have the framework, the employers always asked, what kind of a qualification is this that you have, and how do you think you will get employed, because there is no, you can't tell what level is this qualification. And we think that the framework it comes with transparency, and it is it is best of use in mobility for students. And even though it is the EQF is a European tool, it seems to be taken into as a part of the education systems also in other countries, so that even in Asia the employers are asking what is the level of your qualification in the EQF framework. And the other point is that is the work that we are doing in National Agency of Education. In my unit, we are responsible for designing the qualification requirements, and we use the qualification framework to set the level of the requirements in our work, and it is now very easy to discuss with teachers and employers when we are doing the work together, what we are aiming at, what level are we aiming at, and what should the competencies be. And it also makes it easier in our together with all our qualifications, so that certain type of qualifications are having the same level, really. We have concerning the framework, we have an act and decree, and the act states that we have 8 levels in our framework. It's the same as the EQF, and perhaps the same that you will have also. And we have included, the Act says that we have included all the qualifications and syllabi that are in the responsibility of Ministry of Education and Culture. And a couple of other ministries are also in the framework, but there are qualifications that are responsibility of other ministries that are not in, and that is perhaps the next phase that we are going into. And in the decree we have the placement principles. That means that how a certain qualification will be on a certain level in the framework. And also descriptions of all the levels, they are written as learning outcomes, so that they include knowledge, skills and competence. The descriptions and placement principles are moduled after EQF descriptors, so it's much alike. However, we think that in Finland we have some national specialties, as perhaps everyone has, and so we have made something otherwise. And one is the requirements or guidelines concerning language skills. we have the 2 national languages, and we have guidelines or requirements concerning them, but also guidelines concerning the first foreign language that you are learning. And the learning outcomes in the framework are written on a very general level, so that it is intended that they will be more specified when we have they will be more specified in the qualification requirements and also in the syllabi. And they are also general because we want that the framework could be used in all fields and in all kinds of qualifications. Yes.
Yes. Is it an open framework that is open for other qualifications aside from what is formal education and so on? Could sectors, for instance, apply for to refer their qualifications?
It's open so that we think that the next phase or the phase that we are now heading to is to have it open for all kind of qualifications. And it was in the beginning when we started with it. It was also in Europe the idea that the framework will or the frameworks will include only the formal education. And in 10 years, a lot has changed, and the frameworks are considered as open frameworks, and we wanted our framework to come into force. So we decided to go only with the formal qualifications, and then start the process with others. We also have best fit principle included, so that we know that some qualifications have elements from other levels of the framework, but we have chosen the qualification be on the level that it fits the best. Oh. No. Oh. The
is it open right now, or is it only for formal education and you're starting the process to open up to
Yeah. It is open, but we don't have any questions ongoing now. They are just starting on what kind of other qualifications or modules should be included, and how that process would go. This is not moving. No, it's not going. Okay. Yes. Yeah, and this is a look at our framework. I know you can't see anything, but there the formal qualifications are, and we are still having empty space on level 1 and level 3. But we expect that there will be someday something, and also there will be other things on the other levels when we really have open framework. And in Finland, the responsibility of the framework is in the ministry, but in National Agency for Education, we have the coordination point. And it is my colleague Karita Blomqvist who is responsible for the coordination point. And now when we have the framework, the next phase is what we have been doing is now the referencing work with the EU, and also plans on how to open the framework for other learning. I think there were very interesting points. I was just listening the session before, and you were telling about what work you are doing here, and you were more further in the open framework process than we are. But we have had the other topic I was asked to tell you about was the reform that we are having now concerning vocational education and training. The national framework is kind of part of it, and it's more taken more into also into it, so that everything is an entity in the education system. And so we have had a new law since was it August, and it is coming in force in 1st of January, and we have also new decrees that have come out in October, and we are still waiting for some of them. Hopefully they will come before the start of the new year, but the timetable has been very, very hard with reform, and it is something that is has been very different from the other reforms we have had, and we think that even though some people think that we have a perfect education system, or we have a very good vet system, we think that there is always many things you can do better, and also the world changes so quickly. So when one thing works on one day, it doesn't work for after 2 years perhaps anymore. So we have also to change our system, and this is how it will look like, and it is a system that will have the student in the center, and this is in fact the path of the student in the system, and there are we have had before, we had 2 different legislations for vet, and now we will only have one. So it's a huge reform, so that everything for a student will be so that it doesn't depend on how he or she has come into the system. And first, when the student enters, there are flexible admissions, so that the student can enter at any time of the year. However, the education providers, vet providers, can decide themselves how many times a year or how they take in the students. And even though there is a flexible admissions, we will have in the springtime, when there are students coming from basic education after the 9th grade, they are applying for upper secondary education. It is almost half of the students that apply to vocational education and training. So there will be a process for them in the springtime, because we know that there are a lot of them. But otherwise, it is very flexible during the year. And when the student comes into the system or in the school, there will be a personal competence development plan that will be made for every student, and it is a plan that should state the choices of the student, and also check whether the student has some prior competencies, and also what the student would like how the student would like to learn, or what is the best suitable way for the student to learn. And it is much different from a timetable that is nowadays planned for a class. For example, for 20 students together, they have a plan, but this is for the student to have an individual path in the system. And we are also we want to take more of the learning to be happening on the workplaces, and so that it will go out of the classrooms. And this is where we more and more need the working life to collaborate with us, because we think that in this way we will have the professionals that they really want. The students will have the skills, and they have learned them the way working life wants them to be performed.
How do you create incentives for working life to participate?
Yep.
And how do you do to create incentives for companies and working life to participate?
They are very eager to participate. It is a kind of specialty in our system. We have in all phases also when we start to work on the legislation, they are also involved in that work, and it goes also to the qualification requirements, and it goes to the learning processes, it goes to the assessment process, and they want to be included because they think it is the best way to have to make the education system meet the requirements of the working life. They are not getting any money for they want to be involved. But we know that there are sometimes some branches are more eager, are more there are more recessions in some branches, and there are general recession times. So sometimes it might be harder to find partners from the working life. But in generally, they are very eager to participate. When the plan is or the path is individual, there also may be flexible study time, so that if you learn fast and you have some prior competencies, you might have your qualification earlier than the others who started approximately at the same time than you did. And the skills are demonstrated in practical work situations, and there are no written tests at all. They are demonstrated on during a normal working day. And when the student gets the qualification, we of course hope that he or she will get employed with that qualification. And but the other choice for some is also to continue in higher education. And even though you get your qualification, there is also the when you go to working life and there you need to update your competencies and skills. So you might take some parts of other qualifications later on. Yes.
They can get. They have access to further studies. What kind of further studies or higher education is it? Is it vet higher education or?
Yes. In Finland we have the access from both general upper secondary education and vocational upper secondary education is to universities and the University of Applied Sciences, both of them. But we know that even though you are eligible to apply, you get if you know that you want to study in the university, it is an easier way to go through general upper secondary education. But if you want to go to vocational education, you can always, if you get the idea there, you can continue, also apply, and you can make such choices during your path that they will get you better chances to have a good result in tests for universities, for example. And we will have one legislation, and it will have now everything that is possible for every student, and that wasn't. It isn't now. No, it isn't before possible because we had two legislations and it differed whether you were a youngster or adult, what possibilities you had in the system. And now everything is possible for everyone. And there is there should be no boundaries between young people and adults. And we have also a system changed so that there is only one single license that will be granted by the ministry that will give the education provider the license to arrange education. We had and still have two different kind of licenses, and also a third one, an agreement with qualification committees. So it was very system with many differences, and it wasn't same for every education provider. We will also have a single funding system, so that the funding system will guide the education providers to take the students through the qualifications, so that they will get the qualifications, and or the part of the qualification, and it will also shorten the duration of the studies and direct the education to fields that need workforce. And with this system, the education provider can have more possibilities to decide what they will do with the money. The system we are now having with the funding is so that you get the money when there are 2 times a year. There are certain dates that we count how many students you have in, and you get money based on that amount of students. So there has been tendency to keep when the student has come in, so to keep the student in as long as you can. So even though there would have been a possibility to go to working life earlier, it hasn't happened. And the new funding system, there will be 50% of the funding will come as a basic funding, and it takes into account the amount of students, but on a different way than nowadays. And 35% of the funding will come on the basis of the completed qualifications or parts of the qualifications. So only after the student has completed something. And 15% of the funding will come on the basis of how the students will go to working life or continue in higher studies or further studies. And there is also less bureaucracy and more authority to education providers. We only have one or kind of two plans that are a must in the system. There is a plan for the implementation of competence assessment, and this is also a plan that the working life is very much interested in. Because it tells are the students really qualified when they enter when they have the qualification and they enter working life. And then there is a personal competence development plan. Before we had many other plans, and we think that when we now have only these two, the education provider can decide what plans they need and what should the plans be like, and what should they include. And we think that they have to plan some of the things they have been planning nowadays, based on the law or decree, but it is they can decide now themselves. Then we will have fewer administrative bodies. There have been a couple of different bodies, depending on whether it has been the adult education system or the system for the young. Now we only have 40 national working life committees that will have representatives mainly from the working life, and who will be responsible for the quality assurance of the competence assessment. So that is also the link with that. And education we are right in the middle of the process, and we just had last negotiation was last week, and we're still having one before Christmas, and we have decided on this on the amount of the committees, and the law states the number of persons to be maximum of 9. So we are now we have asked our stakeholders, and we also had an open search in the internet, so everyone could apply and tell that I would be eligible. And we are now making them out the groups that will be and having these negotiations we are having, so that there will be employers and employees, and also teachers or the education providers side. So, and the sectors are there. There is like construction sector is one, and then there are some. This social and healthcare sector is very large. There will be 2 for that sector, and and in the future, education provider will also award the qualifications. They will give the certificate. Before, there has been 2 different kind of processes for giving the certificate. So this is much less work in the certificate process. We will have also fewer and more broad-based qualifications. This is mainly what we do in my unit. The qualification requirements, and there were 351, and now we are having them 164, and we are just having the most of them out this month, and some have been agreed to come out during next year. And within these broader qualifications, the students have more options to make, but they, even though they have more options, they still can specialize in certain field. The role of the teacher is changing. They should be in the future doing more cooperation and share expertise. And this is because the work is carried out in various learning environments, and also the teachers go to workplace to give guidance. And guiding and coaching is a vital part of the teacher's work in future. And this is something I also took out because it interests a lot. In present legislation, we don't have the possibility to export qualifications. And we have had a pilot ongoing about one year on export, and now from the beginning of next year the export will be possible for everyone. And this we think that it is something that Finland should be doing, since we have a good system, and we want others to learn on our system. So we'll see what will happen and how this will develop. Yeah.
That is very interesting in an international perspective, because the guru of qualification frameworks, Jens Björnevold, he has said qualifications are currencies, and now you are exporting them.
Yeah.
That's quite fantastic.
Yeah. Yes. Okay, but that was this is my last slide. I have gathered some information, links also on English web pages, but also in Swedish language. For example, the picture of our new vet system is also available in Swedish. Thank you.
Tack så mycket. Finns det ytterligare någon fråga till Kati? Yeah.
Thank you. Two questions.
Yes.
One related to this contingency-based funding, where 15% would be related to the transition of the students, let's say, onto further education or employment. Of course, this could be controversial in that if you're a school in a, let's say, a relatively well-off area where the children's parents have good networks and so on, they probably have a very high transition rate, whereas if you're a school in a difficult area, might be for various reasons that school could struggle, even though that school might need more funding to ensure that their learners have a successful transition. So I wonder about the discussions nationally related to that point. The other issue is the export, the selling of, say, components of a vocational education. That's obviously very interesting as well. And have you thought about what types of markets? Is this looking for wealthy markets, say in the EU or the US or somewhere that might purchase these? Or could it be combined with Finnish development assistance to markets which really need these types of vocational innovation and qualifications, where they'd be partially financed through your Finnish development agency, whatever it's called?
Yeah. Well, I will start with the export business. It is so that when, for example, an education provider wants to export qualifications, it is their business, and there is no funding coming from the government or us. So they are totally on their own. But we want to be with them in that business, because we think that it will also be some kind of quality assurance system, and we will know what is happening. And from the the pilots that we have had, they have mostly been to the Gulf area. Interest has been in the Gulf area and also Asia, and not Europe, because in Europe it is possible to export, but outside Europe it hasn't been, but there is not so much interest. I think we are in Europe. We are constructing our education systems together, so there are much similarities in all of our systems. But the main interests have been in Gulf area and Asia, and also some minor interests in Africa and United States, but not so much. And mainly the interests are for the sectors that have huge number of students also in Finland, for example, social and healthcare and manufacturing technology. And your other question of the funding, the 50% goes to the provider when the 15% of the funding, if he gets the students to get employed or to continue in further studies. In Finland, the discussion we have concerning the different state of the areas in country or in cities, it is mainly the discussion is mainly within basic education and not on upper secondary level, and there are some signals that we are also starting to have even in one city schools in basic education schools that have different possibilities for the pupils. And for example, the city of Helsinki has now been during the last year giving funding for those schools that have had problems with the pupils, so that they perhaps they don't have so much support from their home. So Helsinki wants to have them to have more money in the school, so that they can have the children to go further.
Har någon mer fråga? Thank you very much, Kati, for a very interesting presentation.